It's really cool to think that people wear my earrings because it makes them feel confident and comfortable. More than half the population in the world has pierced ears, at least one piercing, which is kind of a cool fact. Like, we do it because we think it looks cool, we like the way it looks, and it's really humbling to me that people want to put my earrings, on their ears. But the more you think about it, they're more than just earrings, they're vessels for confidence. My name is Lexi and I'm a polymer clay artist. I feel like I've always loved making. I've always been really creative. I feel like it's just kind of something that's been part of me ever since I was little. As a kid, I loved art, all forms of art. I used to make these little friendship bracelets and I'd give them to all my friends in the neighborhood. I had like 12 of them on my ankle, on my wrist, at all times. And I really enjoyed doing that. I liked painting, drawing with chalk, messing with clay, polymer clay, which is crazy because here we are. Now I'm working with it all the time. Who would have thought? But yeah, I think it all really just started with parents who were really encouraging as far as creativity went. They always wanted me to just explore that, do what I loved, and I'm really grateful that I got the chance to do that as a kid. But I kind of stopped when I got to college. I got too busy. I was caught up with working, school, studying, getting good grades, all of that. And it wasn't until after I was married and in dental hygiene school that I started picking up again. I started by making like scrunchies and hair scarves on my sewing machine that my grandma gave me when I graduated from high school. And I realized that it was something that I could turn into a business, because like I could buy a whole bolt of fabric and I could cut that up, make 20 scrunchies out of it and sell each of those for way more than what I had bought them for. And got to work with my hands. I really loved that. So I started selling those just as a way to pay for school, because I wanted something flexible, something I could do from home while I was studying, working, all that. And it took off. I was really surprised. I feel like at first, with every business owner, it starts off with just family and friends supporting, and that's really what it was for the first few months. But my family and friends were so supportive. Everyone purchased, everyone shouted out, everyone spread the word, which is really cool. Every spare minute I would just sit down, craft, make, bake, sit down, craft, make, bake, over and over and over again. And I soon realized that I needed a better way to start selling these things. Because there were just too many pieces. I didn't know what to do with them. So I started giving them away, started selling them to friends, started using Instagram on my stories as a way to sell. And that went really well. I didn't expect it to go as well as it did, but it exploded with that. I started getting people following me from outside of just my friend and family circle, which was super humbling. You never expect anyone other than your mom to really support what you're doing as a creative endeavor. Maybe your spouse, maybe friends, close family. But I quickly realized that I couldn't be very mobile with a sewing machine. It was really loud, couldn't do a whole lot while I was sewing. So I started kind of experimenting with other things, other accessories instead of like hair stuff. What could I do with my hands that I could make, sell, wear for myself? And something that came to mind was earrings. I'd seen a few people make these earrings out of clay or out of wire and beads and stones and stuff. I was like, okay, let me try my hand at that. So I experimented a little bit with rope. I started making earrings out of rope and twisted thread and yarn and hooks and stuff like that. But the one that really stood out was polymer clay, because it's so lightweight, so easy to access, easy to work with. It's a beginner material, but can also become an advanced material, which is cool because it leaves so much room for expansion and growth and learning. I started making earrings. My neighbor next door was moving and she had this big, massive, those like under the bed boxes, the Tupperware ones. She had a huge box of polymer clay, rollers, cutters, the works. And before I just bought like the little single pack and was rolling it with like a cup on the countertop, and then cutting it with like chapstick tube lids and X-Acto knives and, like cookie cutters that we had around the house. And as soon as she gave me that box, she's like, hey, do you want this? You should try making these earrings. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm already trying to experiment with this. This would be really cool to kind of expand and explore more than I would on my own. And that's when things really started to take off. Well, I was out of school. I had graduated. My scrunchies and hair scarves paid for school, which was nice. We graduated debt-free. So cool. Such a good feeling. And then, I started working as a hygienist full-time. And you don't really realize the toll that something's going to take on your body till you actually start doing it. But it was exhausting. And I was doing that full-time. I was working on my business on the side more than full-time, because I feel like small businesses always take a lot more time out of your day than you expect. I was working on my business more than full-time, 80-hour weeks on the business, and then 40-hour plus on top of that with my job. So it just really wasn't sustainable. I was exhausted, burned out. I would wake up, go to work, come home, stay up really late, go to bed, repeat until the weekend, where I'd give myself maybe 1 or 2 hours to relax, and then the rest of it was just spent sitting and making, which was a lot of fun. I feel like it was a big stress reliever for me, being able to make with my hands, but it definitely wasn't sustainable long term. It was exhausting. So Ben kept kind of dropping hints, hey, you should quit your job, you should quit your job, you should quit your job, you should really quit your job. And I was so afraid. I was scared to make the leap. I didn't know if I'd be able to make it work. I feel like every entrepreneur kind of has that initial fear, like what if this doesn't go the way that I'm hoping it does, and what if I flop, and what if there's no going back, and what if I fail, But one day he finally convinced me, hey, put in your 2 weeks, today's the day, you need to quit your job. And I did it, and it was the scariest thing I had ever done up until that point. I remember that first day not having work. I sat down to start making, and there was just so much time to make that I made like 3 times what I was able to make on any other day. And I just remember thinking, oh, this is awesome. This is so cool. I don't have to wake up on anyone else's timeline. I can work whenever I want. I can take breaks whenever I want. I get to play with the dog. That was a big determining factor. Oh yeah, ate snacks all day. It was a big win. And after that, we started expanding. We started hiring employees, getting help because my hands just weren't enough. Ben started by helping me, but he doesn't love the crafty stuff. He's more the business side, which is totally fine. We'll let him have that strength. So we hired people who could help me with the hands-on stuff, which has been really beneficial, and things have just kind of kept expanding. So. Welcome to the studio. Let me go ahead and show you around. This is our clay storage station where everything sits that we need in order to make with clay. And this is where the magic happens. This is usually where I'm sitting whenever I'm making any of the earrings that I'm working on. Once they've been baked, we move over to this back table where we sand and drill and finish each piece. And then it's either assembled here or at this next station that can also double as a second make station. We also have a hand washing station because your hands get super messy working with polymer clay. And then our awesome packing station where we've got all the supplies that we need, our label printing station, and the table that we use to pack everything. Today I'm going to walk you through how to make one of my signature pieces, which is called the Mega Coretta. It's an earring design made out of polymer clay, which is super lightweight and is made out of materials that you can easily find at your local craft store. To start making, it's really easy. You're just going to need polymer clay, which you can find at Michael's. I already have some opened here on the desk that we're going to be using today. The easiest way that I found to work with it is to slice it with a tissue blade. This just makes it so that it's thinner, easier to manage, and easier to run through your pasta machine or hand roll. When working with polymer clay, I would recommend to make sure that you have a really clean surface to begin with. This stuff is really sticky, so it picks up on anything that's on the surface already. The nice thing about working with polymer clay is that it's pretty easy to work with. You don't need a whole lot of supplies or materials to get started. You can use anything you have around the house. I remember when I first started, I used like chapstick lids to cut shapes in it. I used just a tissue blade and a roller, and that was enough. Before I run things through my pasta machine, I will typically flatten them out just so that they go through a little bit smoother. When working with the pasta machine, I like to start on the widest setting just so that the clay runs through a little bit smoother, and then we'll go ahead and we'll tighten the rollers just to make our clay sheet a little bit thinner. When conditioning polymer clay, I typically will recommend running it through a pasta machine at least 20 to 30 times, which is time consuming, but it gives the best result as far as consistency of the clay goes. If you see any crumbly edges along the sides, it means that your clay is not conditioned and that it needs to be worked for just a little bit longer. Okay, so you saw that we started with green and orange. I'm making a little bit more of a muted green color. The great thing about polymer clay is that it's really easy to mix. As far as colors go, you can customize and make the exact color that you're looking for by combining different colors of clay. I recommend folding it and either running it through on the side, so the side is down, or the bottom. That way you don't trap any air bubbles. If you run it through with the fold facing down, you trap bubbles, which makes for a really bubbly earring in the end, or whatever you're making, and we don't want that. We want a nice, smooth, high quality piece. Now that that color is looking a little bit more distributed, it's looking even, I'm going to start refining the thickness of the shape. I typically like to roll out my clay to 1/8 of an inch in thickness. That works really well with the jump rings that I use, the rings that connect all of the earrings together. For the base of the earring that I'm going to be creating, I'm going to make a speckled granite color. Okay, so once all of your pieces are flattened to 1/8 of an inch, I typically will thin them out to half of what they were, so 1/16 of an inch. I would recommend for the main body of the earring that it be 1/8 of an inch, just so that there's that strength and it doesn't break apart. But with anything you want to layer on top, anything you want to add to the main piece, you can shape them into balls, into ropes, into really anything. That's kind of the cool thing about polymer clay. You can do whatever you want with it. Okay, so before I start cutting into my shapes, I like to flatten them onto the tile just so that they stick. I like working on a smooth surface just because the clay has a little bit better of a grip. For this particular design, I have a mix of cutters that I've either 3D printed myself or purchased from other cutter makers. For this specific design, I like to start by cutting lots of shapes out of these thinner pieces of clay because we are going to be layering them on top of the thicker piece. Because this earring design is so large, I typically will get 1 or 2 pairs out of this amount of clay. And then my favorite part is peeling away the clay to show what's underneath all the shapes that we just cut. All right, we're ready to get started. With this thicker piece, I just want to make sure that the sides are stuck down. Since this is a larger piece of clay and we are going to be cutting larger shapes out of it, I don't feel the need to roll it flat because I don't think that it'll stick inside these shapes. I think it'll stick pretty well to the surface that we're on. I'm not pressing all the way through when I get these outlines. I'm just creating sort of a border that I can fill in with these shapes. That way I know right where I need to place them and don't waste any clay. Now for my favorite part. I like to scrape up each piece using a tissue blade. I like to smooth the edges of my the pieces that I'm going to be layering, just because I feel like it makes them look a lot nicer and neater on the other clay. For now, I'm just lightly tacking these down with my fingers. Again, since polymer clay is so sticky, you don't need a whole lot to hold these pieces together since they're not going to be super functional or holding anything up. As soon as you've got everything laid out on top of your initial slab, or piece of clay, you're good to go ahead and start cutting. I will typically, actually before we cut, I'm gonna just roll once to make sure that these are nice and stuck on here. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and cut. Again, you wanna apply pressure all the way through the clay, making sure that whatever you're cutting with makes contact with the surface that you're cutting on. And then we're gonna cut the top pieces out. If I have a round cutter, I like to slide it clockwise and counterclockwise, just because it kind of defines that edge around the clay that you're working with a little bit better, which makes your job easier later on because you don't have to sand as much. Okay. Always so satisfying. Now that we've got these pieces, we're good to go ahead and get them ready for baking. So it doesn't need anything high-tech or expensive to work. You can just use your regular standard kitchen oven. Before I bake my pieces, I like to put them on a piece of paper just so that the items don't stick to the tray that I'll be baking on. I'll typically bake the pieces that will go on the ears upside down because I like to add the posts before we bake. To add the posts to the top, I will use liquid Sculpey. You can buy this at Michael's, and I'll add a dot. And then you just go ahead and stick those posts right on in there. Not too tricky or difficult. Liquid Sculpey is awesome because it literally is clay just in liquid form. So once it bakes, it adheres really well to the clay that it's on. We're gonna go ahead and put these in the oven at 275 degrees for 55 minutes, and then we'll be right back. Once these are out of the oven and cooled off, we're ready for the next step, which is sanding to get that nice smooth edge on all the pieces. The reason I use the Dremel on these pieces or sandpaper is to get rid of that really rough edge that we created when we were cutting the clay. Once we've sanded off all the rough edges, we're gonna go ahead and drill through the piece. That way we have nice smooth holes for the jump rings to go through. Next, we're going to connect all the pieces that we've just finished sanding and drilling. You can find jump rings like these at Michael's, same with these chain nose pliers. I like to use 2 pairs of them at a time because it makes opening the jump rings quite a bit easier. You can use any size, color, thickness of jump ring as long as it will work to connect your pieces of clay and those clay pieces don't bump into each other. They should hang just fine. To close those jump rings, you just grab like you did before and go in the opposite direction. Nice and easy. Just make sure that the ends of the jump ring meet up. That way there aren't any gaps, as that can cause issues when wearing the earrings. Once your pieces are sanded, drilled, and assembled, you're good to go ahead and put them on a card, like I do. I use hypoallergenic components, so the backs are hypoallergenic, so are the posts. And once these are together, there we go. You can hang it up on a pegboard. Easy to transport, easy to keep them together, easy to ship. This is how I prep them for markets, selling, display, all the above. My favorite thing is seeing the whole process. So it doesn't really narrow it down, but I love seeing something beautiful come out of just scraps and pieces, and that lump of clay turns into cool earrings. Just the ability to create without limits and without boundaries and see something really beautiful come out of nothing is my favorite part for sure. Whenever I'm designing a collection, I always start with one earring that I've just kind of made while I was making for fun. And then it just kind of builds off of that. It's cool to see how one idea snowballs into the next, into 5 more, into 20 more. And it just kind of takes on a mind of its own. And as soon as I, have several pieces laid out, I can see which ones I like best together. And I'll set those aside, look at them, take a few pictures, make sure they look good, cohesive. I'll wear each of the earring designs for at least 8 hours just to make sure that they're comfortable, functional. Growing up, I always had to have special earrings, the kind that was super hypoallergenic, the kind that wasn't gonna hurt my ears or make them infected. And if I made the mistake of trying on the wrong earrings, I would have ears that were painful and swollen. And so for me, the biggest thing was finding earrings that were cute and also wearable. And I feel like that's a struggle that a lot of women have, finding earrings that are fashionable and on trend and cute. So I like to make sure that I'm absolutely in love with it before I put it up for sale. Whenever I'm taking pictures, I like to start with natural light. I'll grab some fabric for the base or a nice smooth surface. Flat lays are usually my go-to. Initially when I started out, I was selling on a common selling platform online, and decided that it just wasn't a good fit for me. So I started selling on social media, where I had a little bit more say in how things were sold. I used to post that I had, hey, I've got 3 pairs of earrings available, first come, first serve, DM me to hold your order, which is great, but then I'd have to collect their address, collect payment, make sure that it linked, make sure that I got the right address printed on a label, make sure it was taped on the right package, make sure, it was just kind of a hassle. So as the business kind of scaled and as it grew, it didn't become as sustainable to do it that way. I'm sure I could have kept it up, but it was exhausting on top of working full time. And I remember it was July of 2019, my husband, Ben, set up a website for me as a birthday surprise and had my own domain. Felt like such a big leap, my own site. And it was there that things really started growing, because I didn't have to collect payment, I didn't have to collect addresses, I didn't have to make sure everything was linked and connected, and could just click a button and print the label with the address and the right information on it and just stick that directly on the package. Oh, it changed everything. I know that's wild to say, but it was one of my least favorite parts, cutting out each individual piece of paper that I needed to write on and making sure that it was taped nice and flat, and making sure everything was attached properly. Changing from that to something that was a little bit more streamlined and sleek, like a label maker, the labels. Oh my gosh, game changer. So as that, made it more possible to make more earrings and sell them more easily, I was able to spend the time that I was spending collecting all of that information, actually making earrings, so I could put more on the site. I posted a lot to social media and used that as kind of a funnel to get people to the site. And it's played a huge role in building a really strong customer base that I feel really comfortable with. And there's just this confidence and this bond between my customers and myself, and it's incredible. I don't even know how to describe it, but I feel like they're family. I wish I could just go hug every single one of them in person, because we're that close. I receive so many messages every single day, emails, texts, DMs, just saying, hey, these earrings feel amazing. Look how cute I look. Oh my gosh, I feel so good. I had a job interview and I aced it, and I attribute it to the earrings, or I wear them and I feel like I'm a whole new person, which is really cool. I mean, if you can add to the confidence that you already have, why not do that? The biggest piece of advice that I could give to anyone starting out is to find your own voice. When you're making something that everyone else makes, it blends in and it doesn't stand out. But when you're creating something that really comes from you and your brain and your thoughts and the way that you process things, no one else has that, and it gives your pieces an edge that they wouldn't have otherwise. I feel like I've spent a lot of my life doing what other people want me to do, And I'm finally realizing that, yeah, I can do those things, but I can also put my own twist on them and make them my own. And that's been really freeing. So just finding my own voice, gaining that confidence. I feel like every high schooler has kind of got that struggle of, hey, who am I? What do I like to do? I honestly just wish I could go back and say, hey, things are gonna work out. Just keep pushing forward, do your thing. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing.